Forbidden Siren is a survival horror video game released by Sony in 2003 for the PlayStation 2. The game is set in the isolated Japanese village of Hanuda, where a mysterious ritual has led to a catastrophic event that transforms the villagers into sinister creatures known as Shibito. These beings, unlike traditional zombies, retain aspects of their former lives, which makes them both eerie and unpredictable. In the game, players assume the roles of several characters, each with their own stories and objectives. A central gameplay mechanic is known as sight jacking, which allows players to switch to the perspectives of both allies and enemies. This unique feature helps in tracking enemy patrol routes, uncovering hidden locations, and avoiding rather than relying on conventional combat. Forbidden Siren emphasizes stealth, evasion, and puzzle solving. Although weapons can occasionally be found, confrontations are challenging, and enemies do not die permanently, making every encounter a tense experience. The narrative unfolds in a non-linear fashion, with events presented through separate missions that occur at different points in the story's timeline. The game is renowned for its heavy, psychologically charged atmosphere, influenced by Japanese horror traditions. Its unsettling audio, grainy visuals, and surreal events contribute to a unique sense of dread that has made it a cult classic. Forbidden Siren later saw two sequels, Forbidden Siren 2 in 2006 and Siren Blood Curse in 2008, which expanded on its core concepts and further developed its distinctive style. Ghost Hunter is an action-adventure game with horror elements, published by Sony Computer Entertainment for the PlayStation 2. It was developed by SCE Cambridge Studio, best known for the Medieval series. The game was released in Europe in December 2003, and later in North America in August 2004. Despite featuring innovative mechanics and impressive graphics for its time, Ghost Hunter did not achieve commercial success. Although it received positive reviews from critics, Detective Lazarus Jones and his partner, Anna Steele, investigate an abandoned school, where they accidentally activate a device that releases hundreds of ghosts. Anna disappears, leaving Lazarus to face supernatural forces alone. With the help of a spectral entity named Astral, who possesses unique abilities, he must track down and capture the escaped ghosts, while uncovering the mystery behind the haunting and rescuing his partner. Gameplay blends exploration with fast-paced combat. Players use the ghost gun to weaken ghosts before capturing them with a special device, similar to Ghostbusters but with a darker tone. Beyond fighting spectral creatures, Lazarus must solve puzzles and use Astral's abilities, like passing through walls and manipulating the environment. The game features diverse locations, including a haunted school, an abandoned ship, and a mysterious laboratory. Visually, Ghost Hunter stands out among PlayStation 2 titles due to its advanced lighting effects, dynamic shadows, and realistic reflections, which enhance the game's eerie atmosphere. The soundtrack, composed by Tom Salta, further builds tension and reinforces the horror theme. Although the game never received a sequel, it remains an intriguing choice for fans of action horror games that blend shooting mechanics with adventure elements. Cold Fear is a survival horror game released by Darkworks in 2005. The player takes on the role of Tom Hansen, a U.S. Coast Guard officer sent to investigate a drifting Russian whaling ship. Upon boarding, he discovers that the crew has been brutally murdered or transformed into terrifying creatures. It soon becomes clear that the ship was the site of secret experiments involving parasitic organisms known as exocells. The gameplay combines fast-paced action with horror elements. The game features an over-the-shoulder aiming system similar to Resident Evil 4, but adds a unique twist. The ship sways on rough seas, affecting movement and aiming. Combat includes battles against Russian mercenaries, as well as mutants that can attack rapidly or even take over dead bodies. Limited ammunition and dark, claustrophobic corridors enhance the atmosphere of fear. The game stands out with its dark, horror-inspired setting, drawing influence from films like The Thing and Alien. The ship's locations are detailed and confined, while weather effects such as storms and rain heighten the sense of isolation. Beyond the ship, the story leads to a secret Soviet research facility where exocell experiments spiraled out of control. It is there that Tom uncovers the full truth behind the catastrophe he faces. Although Cold Fear was compared to Resident Evil 4, it never reached the same level of popularity or sales. The game received mixed reviews, praised for its atmosphere and dynamic combat system, but criticized for its controls and lack of originality. Over time, however, it has gained a cult following and is now remembered as one of the most underrated survival horror games of the PlayStation 2 era. Michigan Report from Hell is a unique survival horror game released in 2005 for PlayStation 2, developed by the Japanese studio Grasshopper Manufacture, later known for Killer 7 and No More Heroes. The game stands out due to its unusual perspective. Instead of playing as a traditional protagonist, the player controls a cameraman documenting mysterious events in Michigan, where a strange and deadly phenomenon has taken over the city. Gameplay revolves around filming events and making choices that affect the story and the fate of the news crew. The player must balance between capturing dramatic footage and saving their colleagues, as recorded scenes are judged based on their intensity. There are 3 main categories of footage: suspense, tense moments, erotic, suggestive elements, and immoral, violent, or controversial scenes, which influence the game's ending. The game is notable for its eerie atmosphere and dark humor, characteristic of Grasshopper Manufacture's work. The story gradually uncovers the origins of the creatures and the scientific experiments that led to Michigan's downfall. Despite its low budget and simple mechanics, Michigan Report from Hell has gained a cult following among fans of unconventional horror games. The game was never officially released outside Japan and Europe, making it relatively obscure. It received mixed reviews, praised for its original concept, but criticized for repetitive gameplay and stiff controls. However, for those who enjoy experimental horror titles, it remains an intriguing and unique experience. Curse: The Eye of Isis is a survival horror released in 2003, developed by Asylum Entertainment. The story takes place in 19th century London, where young Egyptologist Darian Dane must uncover the mystery behind the Curse of the Eye of Isis, an ancient artifact brought to the British Museum. When a mysterious plague spreads through the museum, turning people into monstrous creatures, Darian and his companion, Victoria Sutton, embark on a journey to recover the stolen artifact. The gameplay follows the classic survival horror formula of the time. Fixed camera angles, tank controls, and limited resources make every encounter and decision crucial. Players explore various locations, including the museum, a steamship, and Egyptian ruins, solving puzzles and battling supernatural enemies along the way. The game stands out with its Victorian horror atmosphere and Egyptian themes, setting it apart from typical zombie-focused horror games. Throughout the journey, players can find notes and documents that gradually reveal the dark history of the Eye of Isis, adding to the tension and depth of the story. Although Curse: The Eye of Isis never achieved widespread popularity, it has gained a cult following among retro survival horror fans. The game stands out with its unique atmosphere and setting, which differs from typical horror games focused on zombies or haunted houses. Today, this title is often forgotten, but for fans of classic survival horror from the PlayStation 2 era, it could be an interesting game to discover. Project Zero: Fatal Frame in the US is a survival horror game released for PlayStation 2 in 2001 Japan and 2002 Europe and North America. The story follows Miku Hinazaki, who enters the abandoned Himuro mansion to find her missing brother, Mafuyu. Inside, she discovers vengeful spirits tied to a failed ritual. The game blends exploration, puzzles, and horror in a chilling atmospheric setting. Miku's only defense is the camera obscura, a mysterious device that can capture and exorcise ghosts. Instead of weapons, players must face spirits through the camera's lens. The closer the ghost and the better the shot, the more damage is dealt. This mechanic creates intense, close-range encounters that demand patience and precision. The game is heavily inspired by Japanese folklore and ghost stories. The haunted mansion is filled with eerie whispers, flickering lights, and tragic spirits. As Miku uncovers the mansion's secrets, She learns of a dark past filled with sacrifices and a cursed ritual. The slow psychological horror builds a sense of dread rather than relying on jump scares. On PS2, Project Zero stood out with its eerie lighting and detailed environments. Played on a CRT screen, the dim glow of the flashlight and ghostly apparitions create a deeply immersive experience. The game remains a must-play for horror fans who enjoy tense exploration, psychological terror, and a unique combat system based on photography. Suffering is a psychological horror action game released for PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC in 2004. The story follows Torque, a prisoner sentenced to death for allegedly murdering his wife and children. He is transferred to Abbott State Penitentiary, located on Carnate Island, a place with a dark history. Soon after his arrival, nightmarish creatures emerge, killing guards and inmates alike, leaving Torque to fight for survival. The game blends horror and action, allowing players to use firearms, melee weapons, and even Torque's monstrous rage mode to fight off the grotesque creatures. The enemies, known as malefactors, are designed based on different execution methods, symbolizing the prison's violent past. The game also features a morality system, where player choices influence Torque's fate, and the game's multiple endings. Garnet Island is filled with disturbing lore, including past atrocities, hauntings, and twisted psychological elements. As Torque explores, he experiences hallucinations and flashbacks, hinting at his repressed memories. The game never confirms whether the supernatural horrors are real or manifestations of Torque's guilt and trauma, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. With its mix of fast-paced combat and deep psychological horror, the Suffering stands out from traditional survival horror games. The dark, oppressive environments and grotesque monster designs create a tense experience. Its story-driven gameplay and unique morality system make it a cult classic among horror fans. Clock Tower 3 is the fourth entry in the survival horror series, released on PlayStation 2 by Capcom and Sunsoft. The player takes on the role of 14-year-old Alyssa Hamilton, who returns home to London from boarding school. Upon arrival, she finds her mother missing, and the house haunted by supernatural forces. Alyssa soon discovers the truth about her heritage. She is a descendant of the Rooters, women gifted with the power to combat spirits and evil entities. Gameplay focuses on avoiding brutal killers, known as subordinates, and solving simple environmental puzzles. Alyssa is defenseless, so she must hide or run to survive. A key mechanic is the panic system. When Alyssa becomes too frightened, she starts to lose control, making it harder to escape danger and increasing the risk of death. One of the game's standout features is its cinematic boss battles, in which Alyssa wields a magical bow. These segments are more action-oriented and dramatic, contrasting sharply with the slower-paced survival gameplay. The scenes were directed by legendary Japanese filmmaker Kinji Fukasaku. Battle Royale, adding a unique tone and intensity. The contrast between Alyssa's vulnerability and the sudden strength at the end of each chapter gives the game a distinctive rhythm. Although Clock Tower 3 was not a commercial success, it gained cult status among horror fans. Its atmosphere, unique blend of genres, and original visual style are highly praised. It remains a must-play for lovers of classic PlayStation 2 horror, especially those who value narrative and mood over pure action. Extermination is a survival horror game released exclusively for the PlayStation 2 in 2001 by Sony Computer Entertainment. It was one of the first horror titles on the PS2, developed by Deep Space, a studio made up of former Capcom staff who had previously worked on the Resident Evil series. You play as Dennis Riley, a member of a special forces unit sent to a secret research base in Antarctica after all communication is lost. Upon arrival, the team discovers the base has been overrun by mutated creatures following a biological experiment gone wrong. The game's story and setting draw heavy inspiration from classic sci-fi horror films like The Thing and Aliens. Gameplay follows traditional survival horror mechanics: limited ammo, tight corridors, exploration, and puzzle solving. A unique feature is the infection system, Dennis can be infected by enemies, and if the infection level gets too high, he must be cured in a decontamination chamber or risk mutating into a monster. The main weapon, an M4 rifle, can be upgraded with various attachments. While Extermination wasn't a major commercial success, it has since gained a cult following. Fans of classic horror and sci-fi thrillers will appreciate its dense atmosphere, old-school gameplay, and early best-to-era charm, especially those who enjoy survival horror games that focus more on atmosphere, resource management, and slow-building tension rather than fast-paced action. Echo Night Beyond is a first-person survival horror game released for PlayStation 2 in 2004, developed by From Software, the same studio later known for Dark Souls and Bloodborne. It's the third and final entry in the Echo Night series. Though it tells a standalone story with a unique sci-fi twist, the game begins with the protagonist, Richard Osmond, and his fiancée, Claudia, traveling to a moon base for their wedding. However, after a shuttle crash, Richard awakens alone inside the facility, which is now eerily abandoned and filled with the spirits of the dead. The game focuses on exploring the desolate moon base, uncovering what happened to the crew, and helping the lost souls find peace. Unlike many horror games of the time, Echo Night Beyond features no combat. Instead, you avoid hostile ghosts using stealth, environmental interaction, and by controlling your oxygen levels through a spacesuit system. The haunting atmosphere, minimal UI, and ambient soundtrack contribute to a slow, creeping sense of dread, rather than relying on jump scares or gore. Though it received mixed reviews at launch, the game is now considered a hidden gem for fans of psychological horror. Its unique setting, emotional storytelling, and emphasis on mystery over action make it a memorable experience, especially for those who prefer atmospheric, thoughtful horror rather than traditional survival mechanics.